Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
I'm Jason Miller with your International News Brief. An Al-Qaeda terrorist has been found guilty of plotting to bomb a UK shopping center and a New York subway. I'll have more on that. Also tonight, a former Royal Marine is killed while fighting with Kurdish forces in Syria. The British Prime Minister issues his final offer for the British Prime Minister television debates. And Colombian officials have detained the captain of a Chinese ship bound for Cuba for illegally carrying, what? Explosives? We'll have more on that. Coming up on the Evan Miller Report this Wednesday, March the 4th, 2015.
I thank you as always, Jay. The U.S. ambassador to South Korea has been attacked, and he was given a speech to boot. It seems letting your kids walk home from the park alone is a cardinal sin in our continuing battle against global socialism. It looks like Target is going slightly Latino to boost its numbers in our business report. Will they hit the bullseye? That's the question. Looking to buy a puppy in Chicago? Unless that item in lawsuits across America claws its way through, good luck. And Shania Twain's upcoming farewell tour shall prove she's still the one. That's all coming up on this edition of the Evan Miller Report, starting now.
Live from Southern California, this is the Evan Miller Report. Jason Miller with news and politics, Corey Evans with business and entertainment. This is the Evan Miller Report on SHR Media. Here now, Jason Miller.
Thank you as always, Pat Hahn. I'm Corey Evans. Jason Miller will be joining us later on in the program for the International News Brief he has ready for us. In the meantime, it is a beautiful Wednesday, and looking at the mountains from our Los Angeles bureau, it's beautiful to see them covered in snow again. Thank you very much, Heavens, for sending us the rain and snow. We needed it big time. But other than that, we've got a lot of news to get to, so let's get to it. Our first film comes to us from ABC News. The U.S. ambassador to South Korea was attacked in the country's capital today while giving a speech, officials say. Photos from South Korea's official news agency show Ambassador Mark Lippert with blood on his hand and holding his face. He was attacked by what the Yonhap news agency described was an armed man who shouted "No to war" training before attacking him. He was assaulted this morning locally and is being treated at a local hospital with non-life-threatening injuries, according to the State Department. According to the Department of Defense, Lippert previously held positions there from May 2012 until September 2014, according to the embassy website. We will bring you updated developments on this story as they become available, so pay attention to SHR Media and our Facebook page, facebook.com/The Evan Miller Report. Next up from Fox News, the leader of Mexico's notorious Zetas drug cartel was captured Wednesday during a pre-dawn raid in the city of Monterrey, officials announced. Alejandro Trevino Morales, also known as Omar, at 42, was taken into custody by federal forces. An official, who is not authorized to be quoted by name due to government policy, told the AP. Trevino Morales is reported to have run the cartel since the 2013 arrest of his brother Miguel. The Zetas' other biggest leader, Heriberto Lascarno, or El Lasca, as he's known, was killed by Mexican Marines in 2012. Trevino Morales, age 41, is allegedly responsible for several abductions and murders committed in Nuevo Laredo between 2005 and 2006, according to the U.S. State Department. He also was allegedly the supply source for multi-kilogram loads of cocaine smuggled from Mexico to the U.S. The Mexican government had offered a $2 million reward for Trevino Morales' capture on weapons and organized crime charges, while the U.S. State Department offered a reward of up to $5 million. I correct that, 2 million pesos, I believe that is. I sometimes get these numbers confused, but moving on, the Zetas cartel evolved from a small group of Mexican Special Forces deserters that were hired to protect Osiel Cardenas Guillen, the former leader of the Gulf Cartel. The organization grew into a ruthless security force that took responsibility for the smuggling of the Gulf Cartel's cocaine and other drugs from Mexico to the U.S., in addition to running their own smuggling operation. Last week, police captured another suspected drug lord, Servando Matuta Gomez, who was the leader of the Knights Templar cartel, as I mentioned previously on the SHR Weekender. And I will be keeping an eye on these drug cartel stories, and even if I don't think they're going to make that big of a dent in the drug problem in Mexico, I will still bring you any developments that arise in future reports or this weekend, whichever comes first. Next up, out of Nepal, according to CNN, a Turkish Airlines jet carrying 224 people skidded off a runway Wednesday morning at Kathmandu's airport, forcing those on board to evacuate and effectively shutting down Nepal's lone international airport. The Airbus A330's crew first tried landing the plane around 7 this morning, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Tuesday local time, getting very close to a runway but not touching down, according to passenger Deepak Malhotra. That was followed by an announcement that the aircraft couldn't land due to poor visibility. About 45 minutes later, though, the crew tried again. This time, the Turkish Airlines plane did get on the ground, but it didn't stay on the runway, according to airport officials. The aircraft skidded off, screeching to a stop with its nose pitched down. Pictures showed passengers and crew going down evacuation flights and walking through heavy fog. Despite the rough landing, there were no reports of serious injuries, according to a Turkish Airlines spokesman. Still, the incident did manage to knock out air travel in and out of the Triphuvan International Airport, the only way in for foreigners wanting to explore Mount Everest and other nearby peaks in the Himalayan mountains. That's because part of the now immobile Airbus A330 was covering a section of the runway. Nepal doesn't have the heavy-duty machinery required to move it, said Ratish Chandra Laisuman, the head of the Mountainous Asia Nations Civil Aviation Authority, and large cargo planes that could be brought in to help with the job have nowhere to land now. Having them land anywhere else in Nepal is not an option either. Instead, authorities are exploring possibly flying in needed equipment to India and then driving it over to Nepal. Until then, all international flights into Kathmandu have been called off until further notice. It includes 40 arriving and 40 departing flights canceled Wednesday. Very unfortunate situation for them. Hopefully they can get that situation cleaned up and get the airport back up and running as soon as possible. And we will let you know what happens on this when it does. Moving on, long-lost wreckage said to belong to a World War II Japanese battleship has been discovered by none other than Microsoft co-founder Paul Allen. This according to Time magazine. A philanthropist and Microsoft alumnus posted images on Twitter that appear to show the Musashi, once one of the two largest warships in the world. Allen said the ship was found 1 kilometer deep by an unmanned submersible launched from his super yacht, the MY Optimist. The find near the Philippines was the culmination of an 8-year search. Allen showed the bow of the ship with a distinctive chrysanthemum, the flower of Japan's royal family, and a massive anchor. The ship was one of 2 Yamato-class battleships constructed by the Japanese Imperial Navy, the largest class of warship built at the time, CNN reports. The Musashi was sunk by the U.S. Navy in October 1944 with the loss of more than 1,000 crew. Allen, who has a net worth estimated at $17.5 billion, is the owner of several U.S. sports teams, including the Seattle Seahawks. He founded Microsoft alongside Bill Gates in 1975 and resigned from the Microsoft board in 2000. Right, on that note, I will be back in just a few short moments with General Petraeus' trial going forward and the penalties he faces, as well as the defense never resting in the Dzhokhar Tsarnaev's case, that is the Boston bomber. But in the meantime, I will go ahead and send it over to San Diego. Jason Miller has more of our international headlines. Take it away, Jason. Do we have Jason Miller?
Stand by and wait for it to load up. Corey, give me 1 minute to work on this and see if maybe it was just an audio issue. Stand by if you want to.
All right. We are having a few technical issues on our end of things, but we will establish Jason Miller's signal and bring you his stories in just a few short moments. In the meantime, I will go ahead and look into a few more stories that we have going here. Oh, there we are. There he is. Take it away, Jake.
Hold on, I gotta, just so you know, I'm working on, trying to get a satellite uplink finished here, so.
Right. As we work on getting Jason Miller's satellite uplink going, I will go ahead and delve into General Petraeus' story while we work on that. Former CIA Director David Petraeus is facing probation and a fine if the plea deal is approved, according to CBS News. The general pled guilty to sharing classified info with his biographer and mistress, Paula Broadwell. The guilty plea was intended to spare Petraeus any jail time, but it still has to be approved by a judge, and the sentencing hearing has not yet been scheduled, reports CBS News national security correspondent David Martin. Petraeus admitted giving his biographer and lover several notebooks he knew contained highly classified information, and then lying about it to the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Quote, perhaps my experience can be instructive to others who stumble or indeed fall as far as I did, he said. Mishandling classified info is a misdemeanor punishable by up to 1 year in prison. In the plea agreement, the Justice Department will ask the judge to impose 2 years probation and a $40,000 fine. That's comparable to what former NSA advisor Sandy Berger received for trying to steal classified documents from the National Archives. Lying to the FBI is a more serious felony, but the Justice Department did not charge Petraeus with that crime, apparently because there was no recording of the alleged lie. Petraeus admitted to giving Broadwell 8 black books in which he took notes while serving as commander of the U.S. forces in Afghanistan, and his notes included the identities of covert officers, war strategies, intelligence capabilities, and discussions with the president, just to name a few items. When confronted by the FBI agents, Petraeus maintained that he had never disclosed any classified info to Broadwell. After their affair was revealed, Petraeus resigned from the CIA. He signed a document stating, quote, there is no classified material in my possession, even though those in the notebooks were still stored in an unlocked desk drawer at his home. Excuse me. This guilty plea may not be the end of it for Petraeus. The CIA Inspector General had been investigating whether he misused his security detail in carrying on an affair with Broadwell, and the Army could still take action against him for having mishandled classified information while on active duty. Talk about your heavy court-martial there.
Well, Corey,
I think it's battle for you, Mr. Petraeus.
Corey, I also think it's one of those things that the timing of that those specific charges was amazing, considering he was alleging that he may come clean about what he knew about Benghazi. So that's definitely one of those cases where I think it's more political sabotage than anything else.
For which he richly deserves to be court-martialed.
And I believe I've been able to fix the satellite link for Jason. If you are ready, sir, I will send it over to Jason for the international news.
Let's hear it.
And maybe not.
Apparently we are having some continued difficulties with his signal. Hopefully we will get that signal established. But in the meantime, I've still got the Boston Bomber to talk about.
Got it.
A Manchester, UK shopping center and the New York subway system in the U.S. by a U.S. jury in Brooklyn. Abid Nasir, who was 28, planned a car bomb attack on the Manchester Ardell shopping center on the Easter weekend back in 2009. Had his UK plot succeeded, police believe would have been as big as the 7/7 attacks in London. A former Royal Marine was killed while fighting with Kurdish forces in Syria. he made a video recording confirming he came here of his own free will. Kundas Eric Shirkfield, 25, is believed to be the first British person to die fighting Islamic State extremists. The video recording obtained by ITV News in London sees Mr. Shirkfield from Barnsley in South Yorkshire confirming his name and his intentions, insisting he is in Syria to help. Local MP Dan Jarvis said he understood Mr. Shirkfield had originally joined Kurdish forces in Syria to provide medical aid. The former Marine's family paid tribute to him in a short statement saying, quote, his flame might have burned briefly, but it burned brightly with love, courage, conviction, and honor, and we are proud of him. Tributes were also paid to Mr. Shirkfield from the forces in Kurdish-held northern Iraq. Meanwhile, over in the UK, David Cameron has issued his final offer to appear in a single pre-election television debate, rejecting calls from Labour Minister Ed Miliband for a head-to-head contest. The Prime Minister said he will only sign up for one 90-minute contest involving at least 7 party leaders to be held before March the 30th. His terms were written in an email to broadcasters in Britain. British Prime Minister's office's deepest dissatisfaction with the handling of the debates. Labour leader Ed Miliband earlier said he was prepared to debate Mr. Cameron anytime, anywhere, any place as he pushed for a two-way debate. Mr. Cameron's latest terms were sent to Sue English, the chair of the Broadcasters Leaders Debates Committee, in the email from the Director of Communications, Craig Oliver. Britain's leading broadcasters who have proposed a series of debates issued a statement in response to the email from Mr. Oliver, saying, quote, the BBC, ITV, Channel 4, and Sky have received an email from the Prime Minister's office with a proposal. The broadcasters are committed to providing our audience with election debates. 22 million people watched the debates back in 2010, and we believe the debates helped people to engage with the election. The broadcasters have sent out their proposals and continue to talk to all relevant parties on an equitable basis. We will respond to the Conservatives' proposal in due course. The broadcasters' proposals include 2 7-way contests and one head-to-head between Mr. Cameron and Mr. Miliband on a date of the politician's choosing. Speaking at Prime Minister's questions earlier today, Mr. Cameron said he wanted to, quote, get on with the leaders' debates but stopped short of confirming he would take part. And finally, Colombian officials have detained the captain of a Chinese ship bound for Cuba for illegally carrying explosives and other arms. The ship was stopped over the weekend in the Caribbean port of Cantaranga. The Attorney General's office has said about 100 tons of gunpowder, almost 3 million detonators, and some 3,000 cannon shells were found on board the De Exim, officials said. But according to the ship's records, it was carrying grain products. The documentation that the captain had in regards to the merchandise that was being transported did not correspond to what we found, said Luis Gonzalez, National Director of the Colombian Attorney General's office. And that's a look at the international news today. I'll be back with a full program tomorrow on the Evan Miller Report. But for the meantime, I leave you in the good hands of Corey Evan, back up in Los Angeles.
Thank you, as always, Jason Miller. Jason Miller from San Diego, always bringing us a very delightful report. Of course, it's not delightful to hear that ships that were supposed to be carrying grain were carrying weapons like that. I didn't know that weapons like that could be made of grain. Did you, Sean?
No, it's one of those things. It's news to me. Listen, we all know that China and Russia kind of work together, and the fact that they're trying to get stuff like that into Cuba has never been a shock to me. You know as well as I do
absolutely.
that, they're hand in hand at this point, and I think they're doing everything they can to poke the bear. So the problem is the bear who's in charge right now doesn't care if he's poked or not. He doesn't do anything.
Nope, he's doing nothing. Absolutely nothing, ladies and gentlemen. And before I send it to break, as I mentioned, I've got the Boston Bomber story update. Almost 2 years after twin bombings rocked the Boston Marathon, the city and the nation, the trial of suspect Dzhokhar Tsarnaev opened Wednesday with his lawyer admitting it was him. Can't wait to get into this one. According to the USA Today, defense lawyer Judy Clark pled with a federal jury to approach the case with an open mind and suggested Tsarnaev's brother Tamerlan was the mastermind of the April 2013 attack that killed 3 people and injured more than 260. The trial began with opening statements from both sides in the courtroom packed with victims, family members, media, and members of the public. Assistant U.S. Attorney William Weinreb went first, quickly describing a gory scene of carnage perpetrated by a cowardly bomber who targeted a group of children when twin blasts rocked a crowded street near the finish line. Weinreb added that Tsarnaev, quote, believed the U.S. government is the enemy of Muslim people. Ooh, take notes, Sean. You're going to want these notes. Tsarnaev faces 30 charges in connection with the blast. He's also charged in the killing of an MIT police officer days after the bombing. 17 of the counts carry the death penalty. Although, Sean, you and I both know that in Massachusetts, they are very touch and go with the death penalty. Yeah. For the most part, it's hard to get them to sign on to that sort of thing.
Yeah, well, this being a federal case versus a state case, the death penalty is more likely. Now, I don't know if they're going to push for it or not. I don't know if anyone remembers a little man called Lee Harvey Oswald. And
I remember.
Yeah, they tried to make him into the patsy after the whole Kennedy thing, and they're going for the same defense here with this Tsarnaev. It's the same thing, and I actually have sources back in Boston, and they know from the beginning. They're going to turn him into this little innocent kid who didn't know what he was doing. His older brother bullied him into it. He wasn't a true believer. He was just trying to appease his brother and make his family happy. That's going to be the route they're going to go. I think the evidence from some of the things that he scrolled inside the boat in his own blood, and I know they're trying to block that from being submitted, but a lot of stuff in there is very, very damning to his defense, and which is why they were trying to block it. So I think I'm calling that he's going to be guilty all the way around. Whether or not they'll pursue the death penalty is still up in the air, but I'll tell you what, if they don't pursue the death penalty, or if they pursue it and they don't get it for some strange reason, I think you will see Massachusetts change its mind on the death penalty, and it's going to end up back on the ballot at some point, because, as crazy liberal as Massachusetts is.
It certainly opens up Pandora's box for the death penalty for individual states to reconsider their positions on it if they've banned it.
Yeah, and at what point, all the people that died, all the lives that were affected, the terror that it created in Boston and Watertown, and the entire general area of downtown Boston, people aren't going to forget that. And if there's one thing that Massachusetts people are, especially those close to Boston, we walk, and me, we walk with a chip on our shoulder about everything. And if the right thing isn't done in this case, you will see a massive voting backlash. I truly believe that. I think it'll change a lot of people's stance on the death penalty.
Right, and ladies and gentlemen, if you listen to this, get ready to rock the boat on this issue. Yeah, and as you know, Tsarnaev's defense lawyers tried 4 times to have the trial moved out of Boston, arguing that the scale of the attack was so vast that every potential juror could already know the case on a personal level. So, ladies and gentlemen, of course, this is going to be a very sensitive case for even the jury that made it. And I'll have to keep an eye on this and bring you every last juicy detail. But in the meantime, I'm going to send it to break. When we come back, McDonald's is looking to use antibiotic-free chicken in their McNuggets. I wonder how they'll taste after they institute that. In lawsuits across America, Chicago pet shops are hoping to dog on the city's pet sourcing law, saying that the city's law is putting their sales in the doghouse. And in entertainment, I've got an interesting one about how India has banned 50 Shades of Grey. All that and more is coming up after the break on the Evan Miller Report. You're listening to SHR Media, and Sakai Sean joins us on the program tonight. I thank him for joining us, and I hope you'll join us after the break.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
In a world controlled by corrupt politicians.
You got a business. You didn't build that.
A team of ordinary men emerge from the ashes to give voice to the voiceless and hope to the hopeless. Sackhead Sean.
Dude, I'm not saying calf was stupid, bro.
Sackhead Clint.
All good friends of ours usually show up drunk.
Also starring Sacco as the producer.
I'm a little bit drunk, 'cause I'm drinking.
They are the Sackheads Radio Show. every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific on shrmedia.com.
This is Tammy Jackson, inviting you to join me on The Tammy Jackson Show every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Pacific on the 405radio.com. Put down that remote and tune into the show that covers politics, guns and the Second Amendment, religious liberties, sanctity of life, the military, and more. I host newsworthy guests and work hard to be a conservative radio show that's not like all the others. So save Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific for me, Tammy Jackson, on the 405media.com.
Who listens to the Andrea Kaye Show? Let's find out as we eavesdrop on listener Roger Johnson in Encinitas.
You know, if our policy is going to be bring any child who comes across the border and says coordination, we have to take them in.
Okay, so apparently Roger fell asleep in the middle of my brilliant political tirade, and now he plans to sue me because I put him on the air, sleeping. Obviously, he's a liberal.
Snoring, not an option while listening to the Andrea Kaye Show, Tuesday mornings at 11 on Financial News and Talk.
You know I'm right. Y'all know I'm right.
Hello, I'm Matt, a student at Hillsdale College. Here is Hillsdale President Larry Arnn on the continuing relevance of the Constitution.
Many argue today that the Constitution is outdated because it addresses problems peculiar to the 18th century. Some parts of the Constitution do read rather quaintly. Consider the injunction against titles of nobility in Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution. But is that so outdated? The purpose of the injunction is to prevent the government granting special privileges to some for partisan reasons. This strikes at the heart of the rule of law. The crony capitalism so common today is a place where the government bestows favors and tax dollars on some businesses to give them a leg up over others. This is exactly the kind of thing the Constitution was meant to prohibit. The Constitution is not so outdated after all.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.com.
And we return to the Evan Miller Report here on the SHR Media Network. Here is your host for the evening, Corey Evan. Take it away, Corey.
Thank you, as always, Sackhead John. I thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen at home, for joining us for this edition of the Evan Miller Report. Jason Miller will be back tomorrow. He has participated via satellite and has the rest of the night off. And I hope he gets to rest up rather well, because tomorrow I have a feeling it's going to be a really good news day. But in the meantime, it's time to launch right into the business report. There's the bells that I needed. Not so great a day on the stock markets today. The Dow lost, get this, 106 points to close at 18,096. The NASDAQ lost 12 points. There we are at 49.67. My screen went blank for a second. And the S&P 500 lost 9 points to close at 20.98. And I can understand why my screen went blank. It didn't want to see those numbers. But unfortunately, it's the news, and we have to bring it to you, which I just did. Next up from Reuters, the Federal Reserve should wait until the next year before raising interest rates or risking undermining the very recovery it has helped engineer, a top U.S. central banker said today. Quote, given uncomfortably low inflation and an uncertain global environment, there are few benefits and significant risks to increasing interest rates prematurely, Chicago Federal Reserve Bank President Charles Evans told the Lake Forest Lake Bluff Rotary Club. A rate hike will not be appropriate until early 2016, he told reporters afterwards. Evans, a voting member in this year's Fed policy setting panel, stands nearly alone at the central bank with that view. Many of his colleagues have said they are open to, if not eager for, rate hikes to begin as soon as June, and investors are keenly focused on whether Fed policymakers this month will open the door to that possibility by removing a vow to be patient in raising rates. Next up, U.S. private employers added fewer jobs than expected last month, with the gains declining as well from January's revised level as growth slowed in some sectors, a payrolls processor report showed on Wednesday. The ADP National Employment Report, jointly developed with Moody's Analytics, showed a gain of 212 private sector jobs. Economists surveyed by Reuters had forecast the ADP to show a gain of 220,000. January's private payrolls were also revised upward to 250,000 from the previously reported 213. The report showed moderating employment gains in sectors such as manufacturing, goods producing, and services. For instance, service providing employment rose by 181,000 jobs in February, compared with growth of 206,000 in the sector in January. The manufacturing sector added just 3,000 jobs in February, well below January's 15,000. The ADP figures come ahead of the U.S. Labor Department's more comprehensive non-farm payrolls report on Friday, which includes both public and private sector employment. Economists polled by Reuters are looking for total U.S. employment to have grown by 240,000 jobs in February, down from 257,000 in January. The unemployment rate, on the other hand, is expected to have ticked lower to 5.6% from January's 5.7%, but we here at SHR Media know better than that. Now, before the recession, big box retailer Target was riding high. Its sprawling stores were popping up in seemingly every suburb in America, and its well-designed stores and chic styles made it appeal both to low-income customers and those who like to shop upscale but simply love the thrill of the deal. But then the economic downturn threw the company for a loop. Instead of sticking with the trendy clothes and housewares that rocketed it to success, Target emphasized a rock-bottom pricing and offerings in essential categories such as groceries. Turns out the strategy didn't work. CEO Brian Cornell said this week that Target lost its brand balance during that time, focusing too much on deals and not enough on the chic styling that made Target stand out from its rivals. The new CEO has big plans for revitalizing the troubled company, and one of them is looking beyond the minivan moms, also known as guests at Target. That's their company lingo for those of you. Instead, they're looking to expand on Hispanic offerings, as some 54% of Hispanic millennials said it was their favorite store at Target. The baby department is one of 4 signature categories that Target is looking to emphasize with customers. And according to a Target spokesman, Hispanic millennial moms served as the creative muse for its major new marketing campaign for these goods. And it's going to launch a Spanish language ad campaign in March with a spot on the hit CW comedy Jane the Virgin. The company says it is a first for any brand to do a Spanish language ad on an English language network. All I know is when you start seeing Spanish language ads on an English-speaking network or on an English-speaking YouTube app, all I ever think is, cállate! I mean, if I want to learn Spanish, I'll go to Spanish class. Won't you, Sean?
Yeah, I didn't do so well in Spanish class. Most of what I've learned in Spanish is cussing from friends of mine back home, and also and also how to order things in restaurants. So, and it's not a willingness to learn. It's just I've never been able to pick up on it. I do.
Yeah, I've tried myself to pick up on it. I just know the basics, like con permiso, that's excuse me, and muchas gracias. Oh yes, and when I have to get it.
Yeah, well, one of my strongest ones is Yo Quiero Taco Bell, and I learned that a long time.
Yes,
I guess I learned that from
Taco
TV,
Bell.
so TV can teach you Spanish, I guess.
I guess. Then they're teaching us to live más, although on our paycheck we're living menos.
Yeah.
Speaking of
I have
living
no idea what
menos,
that means.
McDonald's Corporation, getting back to the news, says their U.S. restaurants will start living menos by buying chicken raised without antibiotics vital to fighting human infections, the most aggressive step by a major food company to change chicken producers' practices in the fight against dangerous superbugs. This, according to Reuters, the world's biggest restaurant chain announced on Wednesday that within 2 years, McDonald's USA will only buy chickens raised without antibiotics that are important to human medicine. The concern is that the overuse of antibiotics for poultry may diminish their effectiveness in fighting disease in humans. McDonald's policy will begin at the hatchery, where chicks are sometimes injected with antibiotics while still in the shell. That's not good to hear, but moving on. Veterinary use of antibiotics is legal, but as the rate of human infections from antibiotic-resistant bacteria increases, consumer advocates and public health experts have become more critical of the practice of routinely feeding antibiotics to chicken, cattle, and pigs. Scientists and public health experts say whenever an antibiotic is administered, it kills weaker bacteria and can enable the strongest to survive and multiply. Frequent use of low-dose antibiotics, a practice used by some meat packers, can intensify that effect, according to them. The risk, they say, is that so-called superbugs might develop cross-resistance to critical, medically important antibiotics. Poultry producers began using antibiotics in the 40s, and so this is going to be an interesting little move. McDonald's making their chicken suppliers stop using antibiotics. That's going to be interesting, and more interestingly, I wonder how it's going to affect the prices. Don't you?
Yeah, well, it's definitely going to cost them. Listen, as long as their nuggets are still pressed into that pink goo and then breaded, I'll eat it.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's where they always get it.
I'm not lying. There's something about that goo.
But I do love the chicken McNuggets thing.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite dishes.
I've always said it. I don't care. It tastes good. I don't care what it goes into it. I know it's. If you go to McDonald's thinking you're going to get something healthy, you are severely delusional.
Good
anyways.
luck.
Yeah, exactly. Their Caesar salad is worse than half the worse for you than half the stuff on their menu.
Yeah, I might as well go to Jamba Juice if I want something healthy, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's just a little while back. At any rate, that is the business report for today. I'll have more business for you tomorrow, as I always do. But now, on to the D.C. news. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's speech to the U.S. Congress is over and the applause is faded, but the crisis in relations between Israel and the U.S. is still on, perhaps even more so than before, according to Haaretz.com. Senior U.S. officials made clear after the speech that the White House sees Netanyahu as one who created the current crisis, and so if he's reelected, the responsibility for repairing the breach will be his, and I'm sure he'll be more than glad to take it on. During his address to the convention of the pro-Israel lobby, AIPAC, on Monday, as well as during his speech to the session of Congress, Netanyahu tried to send in signals of calm and reconciliation in U.S. President Obama's direction. Nevertheless, senior White House officials considered the attempts too little too late. Obama's associates seem to have identified a Netanyahu behavior pattern. First he attacks and creates a crisis, then he rolls his eyes and praises Obama publicly. At least, that's how they analyze it. How Obama analyzes it is just picks up the remote, click, Game Show Network is on. Oh wait, that's me. At any rate, it goes on and on to analyze Netanyahu's comments, but I will go ahead and send that up to Jay to put up on the Facebook page, facebook.com/The Evan Miller Report, and I'll let you at home read it and decide for yourselves how you feel about Netanyahu's speech. Next up, Obama's healthcare reform law came under intense judicial scrutiny today as a sharply divided U.S. Supreme Court took up a case that threatens to derail the Affordable Care Act. If that happens, experts have warned it could potentially leave millions of low- and middle-income Americans with no way to afford their health insurance. The case is considered a potential blockbuster with high stakes involving billions of dollars in tax subsidies and healthcare insurance plans. Based on the tone and content of the questions, the four members of the court's liberal wing are solidly behind the Obama administration's interpretation of Obamacare. On the other side, the court's conservative justices were more skeptical of the administration's arguments and appeared more accepting of the challenger's view of the case. Nevertheless, it remains unclear how Chief Justice John Roberts and perhaps Justice Anthony Kennedy will ultimately vote. Chief Roberts cast the deciding vote in the 2012 constitutional challenge to Obamacare. That vote has led some analysts to consider him a possible deciding vote in this case as well. At several points, Justice Kennedy raised concerns that the ACA's ham-handed take-it-or-leave-it approach to tax credits could be unconstitutionally coercive toward the states, thus raising federal concerns. Kennedy suggested that perhaps the challengers might prevail in an analysis of the plain words of the statute, but he stressed that, quote, there's a serious constitutional problem if we adopt your argument. Indeed, because as I personally feel, making the American public buy anything that they can't really afford, that is quite detrimental to the very founding principles that this country is built on. Don't you think, Sean?
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, we could sit here all night and discuss this, but I just hope the right thing is done this time, seeing how it hasn't been done in the past. I don't feel 100% confident. Not as confident. I don't have
Yeah,
as much
I feel
confidence
that
as I
Obama
should.
actually bullied them into passing Obamacare. I don't know exactly what went down, but something feels sketchy about how that was found constitutional.
I've always had a theory on it that's actually quite the opposite, and I know I get a lot of guff from my own conservative friends for this, but I definitely believe that Roberts was proving a point to the country of, hey, you know what, you elected these people, you let them pass this bill without calling them on it. This is your fault. They were able to make it sneaky enough that it's held constitutional, whether we like it or not. Now you have to deal with it.
Yeah, I don't like that approach at all.
It's not
How
his
they
job,
approach
and I
things like
understand
but-
that. It's not his job, and he should not be doing that. But on the other hand, I think that's part of that went into his decision-making is, hey, you let them sneak this language in. This language, whether you like it or not, makes it pseudo-constitutional, even though it's a complete sidestep and it's a complete sham.
And the rollout has been a complete disaster.
Oh, yeah, no.
Healthcare.gov, who will ever forget that?
Yeah, you can land a plane in a Turkish plane in Istanbul easier than you can get online and get health care.
And probably figure out how to get that plane off the runway in the fall.
Oh, man. We're in a lot of
Yeah.
trouble, Corey. A lot of trouble.
Yes, we are. And Jason's certainly going to let me hear it when he comes back on tomorrow. But at any rate, one more story before we go into global socialism, because there's definitely plenty of global socialism going on all around us. After news spread that Hillary Clinton relied exclusively on her personal email account while she served as Secretary of State, the House Select Committee on Benghazi has sent subpoenas to the State Department today, explicitly requesting all of her communications related to Libya. The documents are the latest request from Representative Trey Gowdy, the chairman of the committee, as his investigation into the deadly attack continues. While Gowdy stressed that Clinton had more than one private email account that she used during her tenure at the State Department, her lawyer wrote the committee today hoping to clear up any misconception. Nevertheless, it's been maintained that the Select Committee on Benghazi is in possession of records with two separate and distinct email addresses used by former Secretary Clinton and dated during the time she was Secretary of State. Without access to relevant electronic information stored data on the server, which was reportedly registered to her home, there's no way the committee or anyone else can fully explain why the committee uncovered two email addresses, according to one source. It's amazing how one can use one's own personal email account to keep everything very hush-hush. But hopefully, with the subpoenas to bring forward those documents, those email documents, the truth will be known.
Well, and Corey,
And
aren't we currently prosecuting the former head of the CIA and one of the highest generals for this sort of thing, or as we speak?
Exactly. So that should serve as some precedent for this case. And reminder, ladies and gentlemen, if she can't handle saving 4 American lives from being brutally murdered in Benghazi, how can she run the U.S.? That's one of our biggest concerns with her running for the U.S. presidency.
3 a.m. phone call.
Right. And now I think we're more than ready to move on to our continuing battle against global socialism. Oh, yes. Prospective Republican presidential candidate Ben Carson, while we're talking about U.S. presidential campaigns, is getting quite a bit of scientific pushback for his comment that being gay is a choice and citing prisons as evidence. Quote, because a lot of people who go into prison straight, and when they come out, they're gay, Carson told CNN on Wednesday. So did something happen while they were in there? Ask yourself that question, unquote. Scientists say that people have no choice about sexual orientation and are particularly critical of Carson's prison comments. Quote, the fundamental assumption of the analogy he's using is insane, said Helen Eigenberg, a professor of criminal justice at the University of Tennessee, who has been studying sexuality and incarceration for about a quarter century, reports the Washington Post. Carson, a retired neurosurgeon, formed a presidential exploratory this week and is expected to decide soon whether to actively seek the Republican presidential nomination next year. And that does back up what I've always read in scriptures at church, that God does not exactly back up those who commit homosexuality. I mean, two men in bed together at 8, a baby does not make. That's one phrase that I've gotten made up for that. Yeah, exactly. Moving on, a Maryland couple, now this is one that I touted at the beginning of the show. A Maryland couple who is being investigated for allowing their 2 children to walk home alone from a neighborhood park have been, quote, found responsible for unsubstantiated child neglect by the state's Child Protective Services. This according to ABC News affiliate WHAM. Maryland Child Protective Services began investigating Danielle and Alexander Meltiv of Silver Spring, Maryland, for practicing so-called free-range parenting, a philosophy that encourages children to have some independence. You can tell this had me tongue-tied. In the Meltiv's case, this means they allow their 2 children, Rafi and Devorah, ages 10 and 6, to play outside and walk home by themselves. The couple told Nightline in an email today that they found out the result of the CPS investigation last week. Quote, we are shocked and outraged that we have been deemed negligent for granting our children the simple freedom to play outdoors. We fully intend to appeal, Danielle Meltiv said via email. I misread that last name. We also have no intention of changing our parenting approach, unquote. And I hope we don't. The Meltivs told Nightline in an interview that aired in January that they trust their children and want to give them freedom to make mistakes away from the parental safety net. But all that changed after the Montgomery County Police stopped the kids in December as they were walking home from a park without an adult and gave them a stern warning. Maryland Child Protective Services then accused the Meltivs of neglecting unless they committed to a safety plan. The kids would have to go into foster homes. In Silver Spring, leaving anyone under age 18 unsupervised constitutes neglect. Suddenly, this middle-class suburban family found themselves smack dab in the middle of a national parenting debate. When asked for comment, Maryland CPS referred the case to the Maryland State Department of Human Resources. A Maryland State Department of Human Resources spokeswoman said that confidentiality laws prohibit them from commenting on any specific case and would only say that the ruling would serve as a point of reference that will be used in any future decision. No criminal charges have been filed. The Meltivs stand by their belief that they are the best ones to judge if their kids are ready and if their neighborhood is safe enough for them to be on their own, not the government. Wise words, because honestly, it is indeed up to the individual parent to instill righteous principles in their kids, essentially teach them what they believe is correct and righteous, and then leave it up to them to formulate in their head how to obey that and how best to go about processing those words. That's the best I can say it, Sean. I don't know how else to say it, but all I know is, in this case, I think CPS has got it wrong.
I agree with you, and it's one of the, it's always one of those things. It's up to the parents to raise their children, and then if something does happen, that's a risk you take while parenting. I think this belief
exactly. It's all part of raising kids. Yes.
And it's
take chances. You get messy. You make mistakes.
Yeah, and I don't want to sound like the cold, crass person. I understand the age we live in, and I understand that there are horrible people who do things to horrible kids. I get that, but they're the people that need to be dealt with, not the parents. For
exactly,
allowing
if something
the kids
bad comes up in the neighborhood, you let the parents know about it and let them figure out how to handle it.
Yeah, I think I was 7 or I was 8, and I was taking two buses all the way across the city to my grandmother's house every day in the summertime back in the day. And it was just allowed to happen because, it's not the risk now. We think all of a sudden the risk to children now is greater than it's ever been. It's always been that way just because of the media now. You hear of it more.
Yeah, they hype it up a lot, don't they?
Right, there's always been horrible things happening to kids, and I'm not saying that's okay, but what I'm saying is I don't believe it's any more dangerous now than it was when I was a kid or my parents were as a kid. You just hear about it more now.
Right, and I used to walk to the park just down the street. It's next to the elementary school I used to go to, and I would walk to and from there all the time. Nothing bad happened. No. I'm here today. I'm here talking about it, so...
No,
there you are. I'm living proof that that the nanny state does not work.
Nope, I agree.
Unfortunately.
I agree.
So, when will the government stop telling the rents how to raise the kids?
When government's put in its place.
And actually read their scriptures? And when will my fish of the month finally arrive? Stay tuned for developments in our continuing battle against global socialism. And now on to lawsuits.
And now it's time for lawsuits across America. The cases are real. All right, for the Audible, Corey Evans.
They are indeed real, Mr. Pat Hahn. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Come to order. Lawsuits across America is now in session. The head of the Texas hospital system, sued by a nurse who contracted Ebola while caring for the first person diagnosed in the U.S., has responded to the lawsuit in an email to employees. In the message sent Monday, Texas Health Resources CEO Barclay Burden said he wants to clarify two new points raised in the lawsuit filed earlier that day by Nina Sam. Burden says the testimony of company official Daniel Varga at a congressional hearing was factual and accurate. The lawsuit says Varga made numerous patently false statements. Burden says Sam gave her consent for the release of information on her condition. The lawsuit agrees she gave consent, but says given the hospital found her incapable of making clinical decisions, it shouldn't have thought her capable of consent. Stay with us. We will keep an eye on that lawsuit and see how that pans out. Next up, the families of two U.S. soldiers who were in a fatal helicopter crash in Afghanistan in 2013 have filed a suit against the company that makes a key piece of the aircraft involved, saying the aviation firm is responsible for the crash. The wrongful death and personal injury lawsuit names Goodrich Pump and Engine Control Systems of Charlotte, North Carolina, and the parent company that acquired it around the time of the crash, Triumph Group. The suit cites the failure of the component in the aircraft's full authority digital electronic control, or FADEC, a digital device that makes sure there's enough fuel going to the helicopter's engine. Triumph could not be reached immediately for comment. The lawsuit alleges the company's design of the engine control unit in the FADEC was defective and unreasonably dangerous, and it seeks compensatory damages of at least $100,000, attorney's fees, and other legal bills for both families, along with any other relief the court deems appropriate. The suit was filed in Philadelphia County Court of Common Pleas. And Chicago's pet shop ordinance was challenged in court on Wednesday. Several pet shop owners and a breeder sued the city, claiming the ordinance would effectively ban Chicago retail shops from selling animals purchased from commercial breeders. This according to ABC affiliate WLS. Park Pet Shop in Mount Greenwood is possibly the oldest pet store in the city of Chicago. A substantial part of their business comes from the sale of dogs, but all 20-plus kennels are now empty. And Mr. Sparks of Park Pet Shop told WLS, quote, "We sold our last puppy Saturday. Before that, we had 2 for about 3 weeks." That's because a year ago, the city passed an ordinance slated to go into effect Thursday that orders all Chicago pet shops to sell only cats, dogs, and rabbits purchased from an animal shelter or rescue. The purpose, they say, is to eliminate the sale of pets from commercial breeders or puppies. Sparks says the city is unfairly labeling all commercial breeders as bad. He says getting their dogs and cats from shelters is not a realistic option, since their clients are specifically looking for purebred animals or so-called designer dogs. To prevent the new law from taking effect, Sparks has taken the city to court. On Wednesday, attorneys on both sides agreed to postpone enacting it until the lawsuit makes its way through the legal system. This temporary reprieve means that Park Pets can start filling their kennels once again starting Thursday, but it's uncertain how long that'll last. The city plans to file a motion to dismiss the lawsuit on March 31st. Unfortunately, we do hear of animal cruelty a lot, like these puppy mills breeding pups that are deformed or have potentially deadly diseases that hit early on in their lives. But at the same time, you can't eliminate all of these commercial breeders, unfortunately, because people are always going to be looking for purebreds or those specialty dogs that you just can't find any other way. Interesting, isn't it?
Well, Corey, it's like everything else. When you make these blanket laws that just you hold the individual responsible, and that's something that we just don't do as society anymore. And it's insane. If one of the pet stores or one of the breeders is doing something illegal, then you prosecute that one. But we don't need to make a law to try to sidestep every single little potential problem in the world.
Exactly. And I'm sure John O'Hurley has a lot to say about this at the next dog show. But anyway, for the meantime, I've got to declare today's lawsuits across America case dismissed, because it's time to move on to one of my favorite times of the day, entertainment. India's government, yes, the country India, have censors have said that will not allow the big screen adaptation of the erotic novel 50 Shades of Grey to be shown in India cinemas, a decision most had anticipated in the largely conservative country. The chief executive of the Central Board of Film Certification, Shravan Kumar, declined to say why the panel refused to approve the film adaptation, but said Universal Pictures, the Comcast Corp unit that released the film, could appeal the decision. A Universal Pictures source familiar with the review process said the board had objected to some of the film's dialogue, even after the studio made voluntary edits to the film to tone down its sex scenes and removed all nudity. But at the same time, it being such a graphic nature, this book and this film, I can understand why the government there decided to just say, screw it, let's not show the film to our people.
Yeah, but isn't this the country that the Kama Sutra comes from?
True.
It's just a weird, I don't know. I'm not advocating the movie in any way, shape, or form, but it's just strange to me.
Neither am I.
There's that double standard that lives there.
Unfortunately. But at any rate, we will keep an eye on this, and if I hear of the appeal making its way through, I'll let you know. And since we're short on time, I'll go straight to this last one from San Diego Union Tribune. Is Shania Twain still the one? Let me start that again. Is Shania Twain still the one? There we are. We'll find out this summer when the Canadian-born country pop star embarks on her first North American tour in more than 11 years. It follows her 2-year residency performing at the Coliseum at Caesars Palace in Las Vegas. There we go. Entitled Rock This Country, Twain's 48-city concert trek will begin in Seattle on June 5th and conclude August 23rd in Fresno. It includes an August 22nd show at San Diego's Valley View Casino Center. Gavin DeGraw will open all of the dates on her tour between June 30th and August 23rd. I'll go ahead and send Jay a full list of the tour dates to post up on the Facebook page as well, facebook.com/The Evan Miller Report. The tour was announced today and billed as simply her first North American tour in 11 years. However, Twain later disclosed that this will also be her farewell tour. On Good Morning America, she told Robin Roberts, quote, "This is my last tour, so I'm going to make the most of it. I want to go out with a bang. This is a very, very important time on the road for me. I just feel like I'm ready to hang my hat up in that regard," unquote. I don't blame her. She's sold more than 75 million albums worldwide since 1993. She's the only woman artist to have made 3 consecutive albums that each sold more than 10 million copies alone in the U.S. She also has 17 top 10 singles to her credit, most notably Still the One of the first songs I ever heard at the movies while waiting for the trailers to start playing. And she is quoted as calling this tour a celebration tour. At least that's what's posted in the statement that was released today prior to her announcement that this would be her farewell tour. Tickets for most of the Rock This Country tour go on sale March 13th at 10 a.m. at AXS.com. A pre-sale for fan club members is also scheduled beginning Tuesday at 10 a.m.
She'll be back.
So if you're yes, she will be back. But in the meantime, you might want to get your tickets while they're hot. And on that note, that's your entertainment report. Hope to entertain you again tomorrow. And that is the Evan Miller Report for this Wednesday, March 4th, 2015. I thank you very much for listening. I thank Zach Hetchon for standing in for Jason Miller today.
Been my pleasure, sir.
And I hope that you enjoyed listening to us as well. Be sure to follow us on Facebook.com/The Evan Miller Report and tweet us at EM Radio Report and at the SHR News Desk. Tweet at SHR News Desk. For Twitter, that is. For all of us here at SHR Media, I thank you very much for listening, and I hope you'll tune in again tomorrow. Good night, everyone.
You've been listening to the Evan Miller Report. For more information about today's program, go to shrmedia.com or thepunditpress.com. Thanks for listening. Hope you tune in again next time.